Samadhi, which is the ultimate goal of yogic meditation, is utterly unlike the preceding 7 angas, or limbs of yoga, taught by Rishi Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras. Those angas, especially Dharana, concentration, and Dhyana, meditation, have to be practiced with tremendous effort to completely prepare your mind to reach Samadhi. All that effort is necessary because, according to Patanjali, you have to fully restrain all the activities of your mind, all your vrittis, which is a huge challenge. Ironically, that very effort actually becomes an obstacle when you finally approach the state of Samadhi. Why? Because such effort supports and sustains the activities of your mind. The fact is, you can't really practice Samadhi. It's the state you arrive at through your skillful, dedicated practice of all 7 preceding angas. When you practice those angas with enough intensity and for enough time, a kind of inner momentum is produced, a mental drive or force that can carry you along towards Samadhi without any deliberate, willful effort whatsoever. Let me explain. Suppose a child turns her bicycle upside down and spins its front wheel with her hand. After she removes her hand, the wheel continues to spin on its own for a while, due to its momentum. And the wheel spins even longer when she rotates it more forcefully. That's a good example of how your intense effort practicing the first 7 angas of yoga can build up enough mental momentum to reach the effortless state of Samadhi. Here's how it works. Suppose your alambana, your chosen object of meditation, is the sacred syllable Om. Through the practice of Dharana, concentration, your mind will eventually be able to remain steadfastly engaged in mental repetition. Om, 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 without any distractions or disruptions whatsoever. That unbroken flow of identical thoughts or vrittis is exactly how Patanjali defines Dhyana, as we saw in the previous part of this series. Next, through the practice of Dhyana meditation, the flow of mantras becomes deeply established in your mind. Eventually, the syllable Om will begin to arise spontaneously, without any effort at all. Instead of deliberately reciting Om, 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 you'll be able to effortlessly observe that repetition in your mind as it continues spontaneously. This transition from deliberate repetition to spontaneous, effortless repetition is the result of the momentum gained through intense practice of dharana and dhyana. According to psychologists, certain kinds of intense activity can produce a similar state of spontaneous, effortless action. They call it entrainment of the mind, or the state of flow. Athletes call it being in the zone. Musicians aptly call it getting into the groove. And just like athletes and musicians eventually fall out of that state, during meditation you will eventually fall out of that state of spontaneous, effortless repetition. That occurs when the momentum developed by your preceding practice of dharana and dhyana gradually gets exhausted. The spontaneous mental flow, om, 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 will eventually weaken and stop. Just like the wheel of the girl's bicycle will eventually slow down and stop. Yet, she can make the effort to spin the wheel with her hand once again, and in the same way, you can return to the deliberate, willful practice of dharana and dhyana until you accumulate enough momentum for the effortless repetition of Om to resume. Meditators in the state of effortless action, along with athletes in the zone and musicians in the groove, all observe a surprising event. They experience the disappearance or absence of the ego, what psychologists call reflective awareness or self-consciousness. In the first part of the series, we called it ahankara, the I thought, your sense or feeling of individuality. Ego is the fourth kind of vritti, in addition to your thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Previously, we discussed how you can recognize the ego by its disappearance when you get deeply absorbed in some activity, like listening to your favorite music and feeling yourself getting lost in the powerful experience. For meditators, it's important to distinguish two different aspects of the ego. When you feel like the doer or agent of some kind of activity, that is the aspect called Karta, the doer. On the other hand, when you feel like you're merely an observer or experiencer of something, that is the aspect called Bhokta, the experiencer. So your ego can produce the feeling of being a doer, an experiencer, or both. Let me explain. Before getting lost in your favorite music, you feel that I am listening. That feeling is the Karta, the doer, the first of the two aspects of your ego. Later, when you're completely lost in a particularly mesmerizing piece of music, the I am of the feeling I am listening disappears. The Karta, the agent of the act of listening, is absent. In the same way, in meditation, you often feel that I am meditating, or I am sitting, I am concentrating my attention, or I am bringing my mind back after it wandered. In each case, the feeling that I am doing something indicates the presence of your ego as the agent of action, Karta. But when your practice of dharana and dhyana creates enough momentum to continue spontaneously without willful effort, then the I am of the feeling I am meditating disappears. The Karta, the agent of the act of meditation, is absent. The feeling of being a meditator has vanished. For me, and perhaps for many other meditators, the disappearance of the Karta produces a feeling of utter contentment and total fulfillment. Why? Because in the absence of the doer, there's nothing to be done, no unfinished business to accomplish, no duties to fulfill. That state is called krita krityata, literally a state in which everything that needs to be done is done. It's like discovering that your to-do list for your entire life has every single item already checked off. This state of perfect satisfaction arises due to the disappearance of the karta, the doer. It's probably included in the 10 kinds of samadhi described by Patanjali. But even in this state, the activities of your mind are not yet completely restrained. Even after the karta disappears, your ongoing practice of dhyana continues to produce an unbroken flow of vrittis, like Om, Om, Om. To go beyond dhyana and completely restrain all your vrittis, you have to not only let go of willful effort, you have to let go of your alambana, your object of meditation, as well. An alambana is a tool you use to quiet and concentrate your mind. When you're done using a screwdriver or a measuring cup, you put it down. In the same way, when your mind is fully concentrated, you have to let go of your alambana. You can do this in several ways. If your alambana is Om or some other mantra, you can simply allow its repetition to come to an end. Or you can let it fade away gradually, like an echo reverberating in a mountain valley. The method I prefer is to allow the interval or gap between repetitions to grow longer and longer. Om, 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 Om. Eventually, the gap becomes so long that Om finally ceases to arise. Then the flow of identical vrittis comes to an end, and the practice of dhyana can effortlessly and seamlessly lead to the state of samadhi. In that state, your mind is free from thoughts, emotions, and sensations. Also, the karta, the doer, the meditator, is no longer present. So then, what's left? Well, the second aspect of your ego, the Bhokta or experiencer, can still remain. To go beyond the 7th anga, Dhyana, you have to drop your alambana. Then the momentum of your practice can carry you along into a state of utter silence, a state of blissful stillness or perfect peace. Yet, even in that state, a subtle vritti can still remain in your mind. The Bhokta, or experiencer. When you feel, I experience silence, that feeling indicates the presence of the Bhokta. Even after the karta, or meditator, disappears, the feeling of being an experiencer can linger. Fortunately, just like the feeling, I am meditating eventually goes away, the feeling I experience silence can do likewise. Let me explain how. In the absence of vrittis, when your mind is utterly silent, there's nothing to be observed, nothing to experience. And when there's nothing to experience, there's no need for an experiencer. So, in the absence of anything to experience, the Bhokta, the experiencer, can eventually disappear. Now, this explanation is extremely conceptual, so here's a more concrete example. If you meditate with your eyes half open while facing a blank wall, a strange experience often occurs. The wall will seem to grow darker, and after a while, you might not see anything at all. You can try this for yourself. Surprisingly, you can temporarily lose your power of sight when your eye stops sending new information to the visual cortex of your brain. Scientists call this the Gansfield effect. In a similar way, in the state of Samadhi, where there's nothing to be experienced, the second aspect of your ego, the Bhokta or experiencer, can temporarily disappear. For me, and maybe for other meditators as well, something amazing happens when the Bhokta disappears. When it's present, you experience silence here and now, at the present moment. But in the absence of the Bhokta, you'll no longer be aware of an experience of silence that's happening at a particular time and place. You'll actually cease to be aware of time and space altogether. Then, all that remains is infinite, boundaryless awareness, completely free from the limitations of time and space. But can you really experience timelessness? Well, how do you experience time? It's not a thing you can see, hear, taste, smell, or touch. Yet, your mind certainly senses the passage of time. But it senses time indirectly, based on how quickly vrittis come and go. For example, when your mind is racing and filled with vrittis, the time shown by a clock seems to slow down. Why? When vrittis come and go very rapidly, you experience more time than a clock does. On the other hand, when you're deeply relaxed and very few vrittis come and go, clock time seems to pass more quickly. That happens because when vrittis come and go very slowly, you experience less time than a clock does. And in Samadhi, when there are no vrittis to come and go, you will not experience any time at all. As a result, the time shown on a clock will seem to suddenly jump ahead. Now, let's look at this chart one last time to see what happens when you attain Samadhi. While practicing Dhyana, the first aspect of your ego, the Karta, or doer, fades away. Then, after going beyond Dhyana, by letting go of your alambana, your mind becomes completely free of vrittis, with the exception of the second aspect of your ego, the Bhokta, experiencer. As we discussed before, the Bhokta also fades away in the absence of anything to be experienced. Then what? Then, as Patanjali himself says, tada drashtuhu swarupe avasthanam. You then abide in your true nature as pure consciousness. That is the state of kaivalya, onlyness, when your true nature alone remains. Of course, the state of samadhi will eventually come to an end when the momentum created by intense practice gets completely exhausted. Then you can simply resume your deliberate, willful practice of dharana and dhyana to get reestablished in the state of samadhi. Now, we come to the end of this series of videos describing Patanjali's system of yogic meditation from the perspective of modern psychology. I've tried to explain everything as simply as possible, and to do so, I've omitted any discussion about the 10 different kinds of samadhi that Patanjali defines. It's important to note that these videos are based on my own experience of practicing yogic meditation. Other practitioners will very likely have different experiences and possibly come to conclusions different from mine. The fact is, using an experiential approach like this has some shortcomings. To describe your experiences in meditation is like describing the flavor of a juicy, ripe mango. Words are no substitute for direct experience. Yet, I hope the words used here will encourage you to deepen your own practice of meditation. Perhaps the best advice I can leave you with is to suggest that meditation is a highly personal inner journey or exploration. The territory explored by every meditator is unique, and therefore every meditator has a unique path to follow. There's no single correct way to meditate. So it's best to experiment with various techniques to find out what works for you and incorporate it into your daily practice. In this way, meditation can lead you on a wonderful and rewarding spiritual journey.